paying homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhanang saranam gacchami, Sanghang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhanang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhanang saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranam gacchami. Acknowledging the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Paying homage. Creating a safe and often relied upon container. The containment of our hearts and minds in the joy and ability to share in the Dhamma together and to appreciate as we move along on our path the understanding that we can awaken in this very life as shown to us by the Buddha, who very graciously, after being asked, decided to teach. And so gratitude to the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the way that we find them useful in our lives as we understand them more. And gratitude and appreciation to the Sangha, us in our Tuesday Teatime group, and those within our influence that support our being here, and the blessing that we have of all of those who went before us, monks, nuns, lay people, who were able to remember, write down, translate in some usable way the Buddha's teachings. And they have gone through so many countries. Each country sort of adapts to what their cultural norms are, and we in the West have a very unique ability of practicing. And so just an acknowledgement, especially now in the days of Zoom, so many different ways to experience the Dhamma, that we have our sweet Sangha here that's been meeting since we met at Neighborhood House in person. And letting ourselves just settle where we're seated. None of us are new at the practice, so feel free to begin the practice in whatever way is most comfortable for you. It could be grounding, noticing the buttocks on the chair, or noticing the feet on the floor, letting ourselves ground into a touch point of the body, maybe the way our hands touch. The Buddha's teachings did start with the first foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness of the body. We can use the breath. We may notice it at the nostrils or at the diaphragm. Wherever you experience it the clearest. There might be warmth there or pressure there. If you're focusing on what your breath feels like, you might notice that it's jagged or smooth or deep or shallow. Mindfulness is present to just be aware and notice what's happening in this moment with the breath or the touch point. And also laying a foundation kindness, of kindness to ourselves, appreciation for choosing this activity and for being here now, to support our own practice and to cheer each other on. The teachings depend on the Sangha, and the Sangha depends on the teachings, a mutual relationship of gratitude. And that gratitude that we have to ourselves, letting ourselves be supported, letting mindfulness hold us, letting kindness hold us. It's so easy to fall into self-criticism and self-judgment, and if we can just stop for a moment and even use that joy generated from that moment of metta that we are speaking about, to let that into our bodies, let that into our hearts. And sometimes we just don't feel very loving toward ourselves. That's okay too. Metta can still be there. We can bring metta to that. And so we're here in the present moment, grounded in the breath or a sit point, or maybe you are able to connect with your whole body breathing, letting ourselves rest in kindness for ourselves. Or at least open to that. Letting kindness or lack of ill will be a touch point for us, an acknowledgement. Often we might not really feel metta, but we might notice that there is a lack of ill will. And so we're dealing with seeing clearly how greed, hatred, and delusion can arise in us, and how the help of metta practice, kindness practice for ourselves, as well as the mindfulness practice of seeing clearly what's arising, can balance each other in our practice. Being with what is happening right now. We can even ask ourselves what's happening in the mind right now, or what's the attitude of the mind. And that's where we can sometimes lend some kindness if the mind is struggling about something, or if the heart is struggling about something, or if something arises in the body as we're sitting. We can let this kindness be a part of what we are seeing.
We may notice sometimes there might be tensions in the body, tensions in the mind. They usually run together. If there's tensions in the mind, there are usually tensions in the body. And as we are having mindfulness be at the fore and awareness present, wisdom is another factor that arises. And it can help us see clearly if some repetitive thought forms might be useful to let them go. And just let go as much as we can of unskillful thinking, as we've been talking about in our first 2 steps on the path of right intention, right thought. And including right view, understanding that in this process we are seeing things clearly, the greed, hatred, and delusion aspect that arises in our minds, that grasping or ill will for ourselves or others, aversion that might arise, or sometimes we just wake up to the fact that we are noticing our confusion or the sort of delusion that we might be seeing happening. And so we bring ourselves to the present moment to be able to see clearly, grasping, clinging, the ways that it creates suffering for ourselves, and at least being present with whatever suffering arises, holding it carefully with that heart of kindness, maybe noticing that it slips away or loosens its grip a little. So we want to be present with what's really happening, and we want to let go when we can of things that are unskillful and embrace what is more skillful. These mindful moments of continuity strung together, seeing clearly, waking up in this moment,
Beginning again. We might often find ourselves not quite knowing where we are. It happens. Just bring ourselves into the present moment, noticing right then and there. If we bring awareness of the feeling tone, we might notice whether wherever we were seemed to be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, and we couldn't really tell. Just giving ourselves some cues for waking up and being aware in the very next moment. And we can stay there and go on, or we can return to the anchor of the body or the breath, of noticing what arises with mindfulness and awareness, wisdom to see clearly what might be useful and what might not be useful, and letting the renunciation of letting go, generosity to ourselves, letting go of what might not serve us. If we incline the mind toward the skillful when we notice something might be unnecessary or unskillful, we may incline remembering the right view or the right understanding, avoiding extremes, not being harsh with ourselves or others. That we want to approach our experience with basic friendliness and respect. Gently placing our awareness on our bodies and minds and in a not too tight and not too loose manner. Having this view of fundamental loving kindness. And the other wisdom factor of right intention, skillful thinking, those 3 positive thoughts of generosity or letting go. We can let go of something that seems to be not of use at the present time. The loving kindness, the loving friendliness, and that other positive thought of compassion. And so if we find ourselves lost somewhere, we can just bring ourselves gently back to inclining our hearts and minds toward the Dhamma. As we let go, we can also let go of ideas and opinions of what we think needs to be happening. Maybe we can let go of some fear, letting go of anger, just gently letting go of negative mind states and creating this space for this cultivation of positive thoughts, skillful thinking. And we might find as we're holding ourselves in loving friendliness, it's harder to have thoughts of ill will. That oftentimes these less than pleasant, sometimes hostile thoughts get replaced with loving friendliness. It's a natural capacity for the heart to incline toward this limitless ability to be in a kindness that isn't personal. It's open and available. We just need to step our way into it or open our hearts to it. While seeing clearly what's arising, but holding it all in friendliness, kindness to ourselves. And as we are with what's arising and what might be happening in the body and the mind, and keeping our hearts inclining toward this loving friendliness. Holding the way for concentration in this practice, to let go of unskillful. It naturally lets go as we cultivate the skillful. And with that in mind, we continue cultivating the metta practice itself to include another person in our hearts, a friend or a benefactor, whatever comes to mind. And as we allow ourselves to hold ourselves in this kindness, may we let this kindness expand, including ourselves in our hearts, and then inclining the heart and mind to whoever pops in that might be a benefactor, a friend, someone that's easily comes into our hearts and minds, wishing them also to have well-being and be at ease. Using your own phrase, or maybe it's a felt sense of inclining this heart energy toward another, expanding to include others in our sphere of kindness. Letting this breathing being, our cauldron of the breath in the body, in the heart and mind, find space for another. A benefactor, perhaps, your first Dharma teacher, or sometimes whole groups of people pop into categories. Just knowing that it's a heartfelt concentration practice that allows us to put our attention in a place where it's easy to nurture kindness. And therefore it also most naturally takes the place of ill will. It's hard to think ill about someone if we're putting our energies toward training the heart and mind to find kindness. And we can do that easily around a friend, a benefactor. Wishing in gladness that that being be safe and protected, have ease in their lives. And maybe including another person, a friend, a benefactor, someone that appears in our mind's eye. Easily inclining our hearts toward sensing kindness, well-being. Relaxed and at ease. Letting our bodies be supported by our bones sitting here. Let our hearts stay softened to include a neutral person. That child or that person at the checkout line. Someone unknown, but we've seen somewhere. Knowing they too wish to have happiness, and letting this cultivated sense of well-being include them. It could also be a group of people, people that we don't know. Perhaps someone or a group that has been subjected to violence or discrimination, or they've lost their homes, difficulty getting health care. Whether it's an individual or a group of neutral people, we let this heart energy that we've developed include those beings unknown to us. And letting a sense of equanimity also be present, so that as we allow this kindness, and sometimes compassion is there, not letting it fall into extremes, but allowing a sense of equanimity to hold our hearts as we may include sometimes more challenging beings. We might be able to touch upon a difficult person, or one might sometimes just show up, in which case we have this energy from ourselves, a benefactor, a close friend, and we can call upon that kindness to also be of direct influence, to touch upon a difficult person, maybe just gently, and then back away, not choosing someone that is very difficult, just slightly annoying maybe, to let this kindness, this well-being that we have developed for ourselves and our friend, our benefactor, our neutral person, to touch upon sometimes a difficult person or a difficult situation that comes into our heart. Letting some of this goodwill easily flow there. And if it's not very easy, then back off, don't go there. Stay with a neutral person, come back to the benefactor. using whatever phrase is your convenient one, that they be at ease. And then allowing these thoughts of well-being, including in all of our categories, letting it flow to other beings unknown, beginning to see this interconnectedness of well-being, that we can include those that are seen and unseen, and those that are suffering and those that are in joy, those who are enlightened, those who are unenlightened, all beings, animals that swim and fly and crawl and walk, beings in all directions, of the east and the south, the west and the north. May all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness, be free from harm, have ease and well-being. And I'm going to close our time this time with the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit in its results. Their future is unborn. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be their heirs. May we continue seeing with intention when it's useful to let unskillful thoughts and actions go, and continue to nurture skillful actions. And may we remember that the goodness of this practice benefits all sentient beings. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya domino upakitawa meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. Thank you so much for your practice. Brings me great joy.